Hey, hope all is well. So, before I start today's lecture, I just want to quickly touch base according to the timing of these. Originally, I had planned to do this every week, which later got pushed to every other week, and now I have to change it up again because you go through life, you experience things, and if you don't course correct when you see something's off, then you're gonna be stuck in a position where you're not always happy. Or, well, happiness is fleeting, so I don't want to use the term happiness. I want to say with content. Let's stick with content because happiness is a topic that maybe we'll cover down the line, but I'm not sure yet. So the reason I'm switching it up again is because the week before last week, I really had like a lot of free time on my hand, and I felt like I should have just done the video then. And last week, look, there's always going to be excuse to why you didn't do it. So no excuses. I fucked up. I just didn't execute on my plans, and that's on me. I take full responsibility and I'm not happy with it. But, it's not about not dwelling on your mistakes because I think it's okay to dwell, but as long as you keep coming back at it, regardless of how you're like talking to yourself, as long as you're achieving your goals, it's okay to be sad. It's okay to be like angry. And I don't understand why people try to suppress feelings because the more you suppress it, the stronger they become and they overspill in other areas. So yeah, I was not very happy with myself that I didn't record. Of course, I have like reasons not to, but I also have reasons why I should have. So if you look at both things, I should have been recorded, it should have been done. No excuses. I take full responsibility. So with these events occurring, what I've thought of is that like I haven't even started this. I don't really like uh publicly announce when I'm dropping it. I said it in the videos, but I'm not really even seeing the analytics of how many people are watching it, how many people, how long they stay on it. I have no, so YouTube's very cool because they have all these statistics available, but my attention is so split right now with like various things in my life that this is just for fun and I want to keep it for fun because I'm a very big on numbers. So like once I start seeing those numbers, of course I want to see growth. And if I want to see growth, I know this is going to become like, if not an obsession, something that takes up a lot more priority on my list. And I don't really want that. So I've been consciously avoiding looking at like the feedback analytics, which good or bad, I'm not really sure. It's not great. I know that because not many people even know I'm doing this. So that's the fun thing. The fact that like, I don't really talk about it, but I'm still seeing 1 or 2 views. I'm just like, well, more than 1 or 2 views, but like, it's exciting. I don't know who's watching, but I do appreciate you. So, with that being said, let's talk about today's lecture. I want to quickly note that today's lecture is actually based on something I'm currently studying myself. So I think it's just a good reinforcement to do a video like this of something that I'm learning. And then let me see if I could convey the knowledge out to the masses, I guess. And the topic is cryptology. Now, it's funny because it has two fields in cryptology that encompasses cryptography and cryptanalysis. And a lot of time I talk about, I'm more focused on the crypto analyst side, which we'll get into what it is. And everyone thinks it's like Bitcoins and stuff. So no, it's not Bitcoin related. So cryptology is actually just encryption of messages and using computer languaging, how to like create secure firewalls and stuff. And it's developed over time. It's been around for like centuries. As soon as people learned how to communicate, people had privacy and they wanted to like make sure the person that is meant to read the message is the only one that can read the message. And one way to make do is just encrypt it. So it's been around since ages. I think early as as soon as written pieces were found in Egypt, was it Egypt? I think it was in Egypt where they used the papyrus paper. Yeah. Um, so we will get into that later on in the lecture. So the thing with cryptology is that it's really advanced through the years because of three major players: the government, industry in general, and the competitive tech marketplace. So all these threes have like they had their own I guess initiatives to like pursue it, but their individual advancements as a whole has brought this industry to like finally to a point where I think it's still not getting the attention it deserves on how vital it is in everyday life. But I think it's getting to the point where like people are gonna be more like aware of like how our infrastructure is based on the cryptologic world that like is overall unseen in the infrastructures that have built. Kind of like coding, people are so used to just going on like a website that they don't realize the amount of codes that a site is reading to run. So that's very interesting too. And cryptology can be used in many various forms of communication. For me, I'm going to focus on communication, and more specifically the cybersecurity sector, as in how websites and apps read and direct information according to who's trying to access the IP, who's trying to do that. So I think that's been one of my biggest draw, because cybersecurity has always been an interest to me, and this just makes it like more of like a fun game because it's also very mathematical based. It's like math problems almost on the computer. So on prior to like the computers coming involved, cryptology was heavily into linguistics because it's the form of communications. However, since the computer revolution occurred and all that good stuff happened, it's been to a lot of mathematical bases. So I think that's very, very cool. So I think I should tell you the source of like a lot of what my information was stemmed on was from a book called um, I think it was like a history of cryptology or something by J.V. Boone. So if you guys get the opportunity, check that book out. It was very cool. And the part of this lecture, I just want to kind of give a quick overview on what cryptology is, and then go into like the origin of it. And depending on the time left, I'll see if I want to continue on, but we'll see where it goes. So let's just start with what cryptology is. It's the need for cryptology, even before, because cryptology is pretty much this. It consists of cryptography, in which you're recording the message in encrypted form, and cryptoanalysis, which is you're breaking the code to understand what the message is saying. So cryptology is just the study of both subfields, and it's kind of like an umbrella. Cryptology would be here, and it stems into cryptography, which is the code making aspect, and the cryptoanalysis, which is the code breaking aspect, and each serve their own purpose, like yin and yang, I guess. And I really like learning about this because it feels like the mathematical gold rush, well, equivalent to a gold rush. I see some contracts that are available for cryptography, and it's I just feel like I'm looking at opportunity dead at its face, and I'm very excited for it. So the more I get to learn about this, the better I see improvements. And the skill sets needed for cryptography is advanced mathematicals now. Mathematicals wasn't always needed, but especially in the computer age, it is definitely needed a lot more. And understanding of linguistics, because there's ways to speak, and then there's ways to understand, and there's also ways to perceive what was said rather than not understand, like not just understanding it, but also perceiving it. So those three levels of communications are extremely important, or how the phrase was used in the context that is trying to convey. So trying to break that, I think that's really, really fun. So I want to talk about the origin of cryptology, but before I get into like when it originally originated, I want to say the modern origination was around uh it was probably around like 19 around World War II. I don't remember the exact date, and I don't want to give the wrong information, but I know it was in World War II. Around that time, telephones and radio communications were up and rising, so trying to encrypt messages, especially for like, not thinking the political appeal of this for empires or like government or like nationalistics. It's important to get like the message across. And World War II, when everyone was just at war with each other, it's vital to make sure your allies know what you're trying to do, but you also know what your opponents are doing. So having advanced crypto analysis, I guess, and advanced cryptographers that'll make the messages for the allies and break the things for like who you were fighting against. So I think that was important, and it became a wide use through a machine called the Enigma. Enigma was made by a German scientist named Arthur S. I don't remember his last name, and I don't want to butcher it and disrespect him by like not remembering his name properly. And he was like a German scientist. I love Germany, you know. I like my Hugo Boss, I like my Benzes, so I have love for Germany. So I'm not very surprised that this machine was actually made there. And what it did was it actually made cryptography originally put on the map. So like before crypto analysis was big, cryptography was the original origin point for cryptology becoming like a major force in like industry, becoming an industry in itself per se. And because repetition is the path to perfection, I just want to say it one more time. Cryptography is the code making, while cryptanalysis is the code breaking. And yeah, that's pretty much how it became into the major appeal. And now I want to quickly brief into how early it actually was that cryptology, like whether they referred to it as cryptology, was used or not. I'm sure the term was definitely different. I think for the longest amount of time, I think during like the 1700s, I think it was just called intelligence. So when people talk about governmental intelligence, it's just cryptology in modern day terms. So I think once people understand that concept, I think it becomes a lot cooler, because like everyone understands governmental intelligence or intelligence agencies, but the fact that the term just changed, it shows how linguistics plays a factor. And now a lot of people are confused about what cryptology is, but it's just intelligence. And even early as like the 1200s, we could really start the story in the 1200s, because what can't we start at the 1200s? Like, I mean, the times were good at that time. Like, it was the Renaissance era in Italy and like most of Europe. It was around those times, it was like Marco Polo adventuring the Silk Road, Christopher Columbus finding South America, Galileo with the telescope, and we could finally see beyond our own world. So it makes sense to start there because of all the innovations taking place and all the ideas free flowing that linguistic comes in, you know, and that language development occurred then, because around I want to say I do have it written there. Yeah, okay, so I said I briefly touched base about the papyrus paper, and it was the first known type of paper used for writing in the 1200s, but when it quickly disappeared when the Islamic State took over Egypt. They they burned through the cities and like historical records. So a lot of knowledge was definitely lost that we'll never know. So that's something to think about. And then but it played a vital role because it showed that we could record memories. We could record memories, we could share it, and we could share it at a larger scale than just a one-on-one conversation. And but as we're talking about writing, I just want to quickly take a sidestep because I am a numbers fanatic, and I just want to break down what the significance of numbers is per se. Development of language is a means of communication, and the more people speak your language, the more people you communicate with. English, a lot of English speakers. If you learn Mandarin, you know so many people that will speak Mandarin or Cantonese. Hindi, Punjabi, that's a whole subset of another billion people that like could speak that language. Communication really allows to break down barriers and really allows you to possibly influence people into getting what to do. So more languages you know, the better you are in the long run. And the reason I want to say that is because numbers communicate messages too in a different format. Numbers is just a different language. And I know I said this in previous videos that computers essentially only speak numbers. So if you could do advanced mathematics and understand coding aspect and you could talk to a computer, you have a great tool at your disposal and you could communicate with that tool to do what you wanted to do, because it's really cool. And if the papyrus paper was around 1200 AD, let's not forget, as soon as like the 1300 AD came across, what happened was they came there was a machine. I forget the name of the machine. I think it was abacus or some. It was a board and it was like a string with beads on it, and it wasn't a calculator, but it was more of a counting method for accounts. So that's really cool. And the reason I find that very cool is because the Arabic get a lot of they get a lot of credit for it. But fun fact, the Arabics actually learned it from the Indians, and originally the manual was in Sanskrit, and from Sanskrit it was translated into Arabic, and then when Arabic continued their Islamic conquers out into Europe and further regions out west, and they started to move westwards, they had the Sanskrit translated into Arabic, and then they translated the Arabic version to Latin. And because of that mixture and people missed the origin, everyone says that the Arabic started the counting system and all that, but it was actually the Indians. So that's a pretty funny misconception that like every time I discuss it, it's just like I chuckle a little, like when you know something and then it's like I guess that's not how history wants to record it. So you know, I'm gonna sit back and just be happy with it. But when the Islamic actually took over Egypt, they destroyed a lot of records, they destroyed a lot of monuments, and you can't build something new until you take out whatever's standing. So I understand that concept, but the amount of knowledge that we probably lost and the way of doing things, I think that's why we still have so many questions about the pyramids. I think a lot of like the history was lost, but I wasn't there, so I can't really say for sure. But you know, these are just assumptions. And after that paper going away, right, what ended up happening in the grand scheme of things is they were using leather. I forget which animal, but they were using leather to write encryptions, to write anything, to any sorts of memory. And that's really how the church became a select group to lead the communication for the masses, because this type of writing form was only available to them, so they could read and interpret the Holy Scriptures. And this pretty much like this allowed them to control what was written, what was recorded, and what was preached. So that was a very big power. And this changed around 1450 when Johannes Gutenberg. Yes, I'm so happy I remembered his name right now because I was gonna say the guy that made the printing press, but that I felt like that would have been slightly disrespectful. So Johannes Gutenberg, he was doing his thing and he created this printing press, and now this allowed for mass publication of books. And okay, not necessarily books. I don't want to say books, but mass production of literature on cheap paper. Now writing was more accessible than prior, right? And the reason I want to bring this up is because this was done in 1450. And so 1450, we had a development of easier communication, right? And look how fast things change and the need for privacy. Well, I don't have to go into the need for privacy. I think everyone understands just the fundamental need and the desire for wanting to have like a private, secure communication. As soon as the printing press was made in 1946, like 15 to 16 years later, there was a Renaissance man. He was like like Leonardo da Vinci is like one of the most popular Renaissance man because of the unbelievably unquantifiable amount of inventions that he made. Okay, I know it's quantifiable, it's like 1,000 plus, but you know there's a lot that like we don't know because he sold so much of his work that we don't really know how much this dude actually made. So I think that's always pretty cool to remember too, because not only did he have his like inventions, there were also he sold some and other people took credit for it. So like we kind of like Edison, so many scientists worked under him, but we give credit to Edison. So it's like you don't really know how much work someone has done, you know? So it's pretty cool to like just keep that perspective in mind because history is written by the victors. So that's cool. But 15 to 16 years later, there was this person called Leon Alberti, and I might be saying his last name wrong. And that is when he made something called a cipher disk. Now, what the cipher disk was essentially it was like a circular compact disc, like a CD per se, but it had two different diameters, and you could encrypt the message on something that he called cells, but they were like levels, kind of like when you're playing the CD and the CD reader goes through the circles in between, which outplays the music volume. I think it's called the polyalphabetic sub, but I'm not 100% sure what that is. I didn't really look into it, so that's my fault again, but it's okay. But it used the polyalphabetic sub. I'm using assumption here to say it's kind of what the CD did. So he would encrypt the message in 24 different cells, and there's a sequence you got to play it in to understand the message fully, which was a brilliant idea. If I'm conceptualizing and understanding it correctly, that was the purpose. So it took 15 years from being able to create a message to someone already creating private messages. So the need for cryptology is like so apparent. And a quick summary of it is cryptology is the study of making and breaking encrypted messages. Cryptography is the creating of the code making of the message, and cryptanalysis is the code breaking. The origin has been ever since man has learned how to communicate. The reason I started at 1200 is like that's our most modern. It's the historical evidence that we still have exists. That's the only reason I started, but I am very confident that even before the 1200s, there were like We're all aware of pigeons using as messengers, using trusted messengers to get some messages across. So cryptology has always been around. It's just used different names. In modern times, this is what it's called, and the number one thing it's used for is cybersecurity and communication in it. So with those summaries, I think this is a good spot to end it. I want to quickly touch base on next videos and kind of what I said about earlier. I'm happy with what I'm doing with this, and I'm not gonna restrict myself to every other week or every week. If I can make a video, I'm gonna make a video. If I can't, I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna beat myself up over it. But I'm very excited for this. I'm actually very happy with this lecture in general today because I learning cryptology is fun, but now I have the idea that as I'm learning some things to make videos on it, it's actually very exciting, not for this video per se, but the future videos I'm gonna make. So I'm already excited for the videos I haven't even made yet. So I think that's a good sign. I think that shows that I guess I'm picking I'm course correcting properly because I'm not being discouraged. I'm actually being more encouraged to do this. So I'm happy about that. But with that said and done, and everything happening in the world, I appreciate you for spending some time with me. Take care.